So I'm going to start off with a dirty little secret about textbook publishing and about religion in America as sort of a class and a discipline. You always have to have a textbook chapter, usually towards the end, sort of like your junk drawer, where you guys know what a junk drawer is? You know, you have everything nicely organized, you know. If you're in the garage, you know, your wrenches go over here, the screwdrivers go over here, and the nuts and bolts are here, and they're really fancy. They're in, like, you know, special containers where you can see them, or you've got your, you know, plastic stuff to contain them, maybe tackle boxes. But then you've always got, like, some box where you got to put all the other stuff that doesn't fit into the other categories. We call that a junk drawer, or a miscellaneous category. You know, when you're doing a budget, that's your miscellaneous part. Always when you're doing a budget, have a miscellaneous thing, because that's where you put the other money that you want to have and you want to use, but you're not quite sure what you're going to do with it yet. You know, in life, we need junk drawers and miscellaneous accounts, because not everything fits into some sort of grand scheme all the time. This chapter is kind of like that. We do have a category that we use called popular religion, meaning the sort of expression of religious sentiment or beliefs or artifacts or things like that that's not directly tied to some sort of institutional religion, but could reflect it. For example, one example of a popular religion, how many of you have been to a funeral during your lifetime? About everybody? Okay. So what are religious aspects of funerals that are pretty similar, and it doesn't really matter whether it's a Catholic funeral, a Protestant funeral, or a Jewish funeral, or an atheist funeral. What are some of the things that are kind of similar?
Flowers.
Oh yeah, everybody brings flowers, and usually there's quite a few of them, right? Sometimes they actually like donate them to places afterwards. Yeah.
The caskets like on the altar.
Yeah, we have these. Sometimes it's called a viewing or a visitation or a wake, and you know, we embalm the dead person. And you know, actually, if you look at our funeral practices and you look at it from the outside, they look really weird. You know, if you were an anthropologist from some other culture, you'd be like, these Americans, what are they up to? Anyway, we have the person, the dead person, their body embalmed. If they look nice enough, the casket is open. What else can you say about that aspect of it? Yeah.
It's like the whole idea, I guess, would be to celebrate the person's life, not to mourn their.
Hopefully, some people it's harder.
Like that's kind of like it doesn't matter which religion. I guess that's the idea.
Yeah, some people are harder to do that with than others, because it depends on if you were a nice guy or not. But yeah, they say don't speak ill of the dead. You know.
There's always a particular color you should wear to a funeral, depending on your culture, maybe black or white.
Yeah, white would be for some of the Asian cultures. You know, Chinese. You know, white is associated with death. Yeah, you don't wear your seersucker suit to a funeral, or the thing that you're going to wear to the, you know, you don't go in and just, you know, a heavy metal band T-shirt or something. You wear a nice, you know, actually for men, this is good advice that I got from my mentor. You only need to have one suit if you're not a suit wearing guy. It's a black suit. Because a black suit you can wear to just about any important occasion. And you'll probably have occasion to wear it to funerals, you know, especially if you're a pallbearer. What are these pallbearers doing? Isn't that a weird thing too? You know, they're like walking the casket around. I mean, we have all these things surrounding how we deal with death. And they may have had originally religious significance, and we still feel like they have kind of a religious significance. But even if somebody isn't religious, there's still that aura with it, isn't there? If it's a Catholic funeral, and even a lot of Protestant funerals these days, you get prayer cards. You know, it's got the person's name on it, the date, usually like an image of the saint or somebody like that from the church or the funeral home. Another example of popular religion that they discuss is a fictional one that you guys again probably could relate to a bit. because it's had a comeback. The chapter begins by talking about Star Wars. And I don't mean people like for whom Star Wars is a religion, because they get into the expanded universe and all the shows and stuff like that. The people are going to be really upset now that turns out that episodes 7, 8, and 9, which they're making, are not going to be compatible with the expanded universe. Oh, it's a big, big shocker. And people are very angry about this sort of thing, you know. Star Wars geeks are not happy. Who are the religious people in the Star Wars universe? Yeah.
Like Jedi and Sith.
The Jedis. Well, I suppose the Sith, it could be kind of a religion. It's a weird religion because you only have 2 of them at any given time, right? Whereas the Jedi, there could be a whole bunch of them. That was one plot thing that never made sense to me. There can only be one Sith Lord and one apprentice, you know.
The apprentice was replaced.
Why not have a whole bunch of them, you know? Wouldn't it make, I mean, shouldn't evil be as tough as the good guys? Yeah, you're right, there's a succession relation. But the Jedi are framed like a religion. And some people, you know, have gotten so into it that they treat it as a kind of religion. We just actually celebrated a kind of secular holiday. What's today, the 6th? So it was 2 days ago. What was it?
May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you, yeah. I mean, you know, silly stuff like that. But some people have a reverence towards this. That's quasi-religious. Those are examples of popular religion. So some of the things that we're going to look at fit into that spectrum. Other things really don't. Civil religion is kind of like popular religion. But civil religion makes the state or the nation into the religious object. So I actually got into an interesting discussion on Facebook today with a conservative friend of mine who I said, I'm too traditional to be conservative on this issue about. And it was about these people who wanted to have American flags on Cinco de Mayo, and there was a big, you know, tiff back and forth about Mexican flags and American flags, and are you, you know, oppressing people by putting American flags there? And there were like guys who painted American flags on their belly, and you could tell that it was like, you know, supposed to be inclusive because they had, you know, some white guys and some black guys, and they were all doing this thing. And I saw this, and I was like, you know, I was raised with the flag code, and the flag code says the flag is not supposed to be used on anything other than flags. Not trucks, not bumper stickers, not t-shirts, not handkerchiefs. It actually mentions handkerchiefs in the flag code and says, you're not supposed to do that. Shortly after 9/11, everyone put flags everywhere. And everyone put flags on everything. You go around with a flag t-shirt and, you know, you're showing your patriotism. Well, so yeah, here I'd be sort of like, you know, the old, you know, sticking them up like Martin Luther or somebody like that. If you really respect the flag, that means that you don't put it on everything. And does anybody in here know how you're supposed to dispose of the flag if it's gotten messed up?
You're supposed to burn it.
You're supposed to burn it, yeah. Now, of course, the people who want to burn the American flag, they're not usually like saying, well, the flag code, X, Y, Z. They want to show that they don't like the United States. But there's actually nothing intrinsically wrong with flag burning. The flag code, which describes the sort of reverence that's part of civil religion towards the flag, requires that of you. If it touches the ground, you're supposed to burn it. Believe it or not. And you can see this kind of reverence on, say, military posts with the folding of the flag. You can see this in how we use flags for service people. There's a lot of other aspects of civil religion where the state itself or important figures are seen as quasi-religious figures. Abraham Lincoln, for example. When Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, now again, it was a much more religious nation at that time, he was portrayed as having given up his life for the nation, as having taken on the sins of slavery and segregation and being destroyed by the southern slaveholders, who, of course, they were losing. They lost the war. They were seen as diabolical by many people in the North. And he was portrayed as being a kind of Christ figure. There's a lot of other instances of this. Saying the Pledge of Allegiance is kind of a dividing line for a lot of people, isn't it? When I was a kid, again, I grew up as a kid in the sticks, in the 70s and 80s, everybody just said the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of the day. We didn't think anything of it. But that's sort of like, Catholics who go to Mass every morning and never think anything of it. Or, we could pick all sorts of other examples like that. Civil religion, like your book points out, was very important in American religious life, but it's really gone on the wane, and it's become kind of a divisive issue since the 60s and 70s. The 1960s and 70s, which are way before your time, and even before my time, things radically changed in the way that people viewed government, viewed the nation as a whole, viewed American culture. Yeah.
Did that have to do with the Pledge of Allegiance? Because wasn't it around then that they added under God or something like that?
In the 1950s.
It was like 53 or 55,
Yeah.
I think.
That was actually done in part because of we're going to stick it to the communists, and the way we'll stick it to the communists is we're going to all be more religious because the communists are against that. And so there's debates back and forth about should we take "In God" out. "In God We Trust" was put on currency around the same time. Actually, the "In God We Trust" stuff on currency would be civil religion too.
Is that what led to the divisions in that time?
No, the divisions are coming about later, in the 60s and 70s. And it's coming about because of a loss of confidence in the government. The Vietnam War had a massive effect on this. Your book points out a lot of civil religion is actually tied in with war imagery. The Star Spangled Banner is this song about how we're beating the British. The British. The rockets red glare. You're not shooting rockets like on the 4th of July just for fun. You're shooting rockets because that's how you illuminate the battlefield so you can shoot people. We often lose a lot of this sort of stuff. The 4th of July was to commemorate having beaten the British in a war. The Vietnam War was a very traumatic event on all sorts of levels. And there was the secularization that was going on at the time. And people, since then, things like saying the Pledge of Allegiance have become a very divisive issue, where people are very strongly on this side and very strongly on this side. Some of us don't actually. Some of us are practically agnostic with respect to that. But that's civil religion. Then your book shifts totally and starts talking about the New Age. And that kind of fits in with popular religion as well. What do you guys think of when I say New Age? Does anything come to mind? Because it's really not that new. It's your grandparents that really got into it. That generation of baby boomers. My generation, some of them got into it, and a lot of us were kind of skeptical of that sort of stuff. I think your generation doesn't have that much connection with it. If somebody's a new agey person, what would they be into? There's a lot of that up in this area, by the way. In part because a lot of boomers moved out of the city, bought land when it was cheap here in the Hudson Valley. What are New Agers into? What sort of things? Remember we talked about this a little bit back when we were looking at New Thought back in the 19th century and harmonialist movements like Christian Science and spiritualism, mesmerism, that sort of thing. Anything come to mind? If you went into a New Age bookstore, what do you think, besides books, what do you think they'd be selling? Or is this totally foreign to your experience? Might be. That's a possibility. education's always having to sort of reappropriate things for every new generation. Your generation's experience may be very different than earlier generations' experience. The New Age was the age of Aquarius. Who do you associate that with? Or do you have any associations?
Hippies.
Okay, hippies. And who were these hippies? Oh, we still use the word today, right?
It's not mainstream. Lots about love, peace, and drugs.
We even have like shows, you know, like where that became a thing, like that 70s show, you know, nostalgia. Yeah, the hippies were these countercultural people, never really well organized, kind of all over the map. A lot of them were pretty into drugs, especially psychedelic drugs and pot. They you know, many of them protested the Vietnam War. They were against war in general. Some made communes. You know, they wanted peace. They wanted to you know, undo the American system, which was supposed to be this terrible bourgeois killing field existence that was turning everybody into conformists. They're very disappointed, by the way, in my generation and your generation for not like carrying the torch and, you know, keeping up all this sort of stuff. Nowadays, we tend to associate pot smoking more with just recreational drug use, not so much with like raising your consciousness. Now, there are some people, you know, people who are into fish, follow them around, wear hemp, that are kind of neo-hippies. The New Age comes out of that time, but there's different emphases with this. Like it points out, it's not a very organized kind of movement. And a lot of the people who were involved with it were, you know, baby boomers that came of age, accustomed to suburban middle class prerogatives, as they call it, of education and security, while at the same time distanced from the social, political, and religious institutions that helped define their parents' identities. They rebelled against their parents, and this is one way to rebel. Not such an option for you guys, because the stakes are a lot higher, because you know, it's harder to get jobs. It's hard, you know, you don't have the security that your grandparents did. So central to the New Age movement is the idea of personal choice. Identity is not described ascriptively by the social circumstances. It's elective. It's what you choose. And so a lot of these people are seekers, and they go from one group to another to another. I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. And one of the concepts that they bring up with this is self-realization. This notion that you got to find out who you really are. You got to be the best you can possibly be. You got to strip away all the stuff that's holding you back. And they bring up two other sort of central concepts: healing and holistic. When you hear people talking about holistic, right, that term, very often we're looking at New Age stuff. Healing is an important idea in it, and like it says, the New Age movement has this lineage that goes back to groups like Christian Science and New Thought. The premise is that the healing comes through the correct realignment of the person with the spiritual forces that permeate the universe and are already potentially immanent with us all. So, you know, people who are really into, you know, crystals and attunement or aromatherapy, the idea is not just, well, it's pretty, it looks nice, smells nice. The idea is this is actually supposed to sort of like realign you. Some people who do massage therapy, you know, will give you a little speech before they actually do the massage and talk about, you know, breathe in the healing force of the universe and breathe out the bad, whatever it is that you've got, your stress, your other things like that. The view is that you're actually, by engaging in these kind of practices, changing the nature of your body, mind, spirit, to realign yourself with the cosmos. That's what the New Age is really about. And this notion of holistic, when you say that something is holistic, what do we mean by that term? Or has it lost all of its meaning? Do you guys associate it with anything? Like holistic medicine. Does that mean anything to you guys? Yeah.
The first thing pops to mind is natural medicine.
Natural in what way? Because, I mean,
Not synthetic or chemicals, like instead of taking aspirin, you go to a tree and get aspirin.
okay, yeah. So going back to nature itself is seen as more holistic than opening up a bottle of Bayer, and taking salicylic acid. What you're getting from the tree is salicylic acid if it's aspirin anyway. That's on the right track. So natural, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say reconnecting with like nature and the natural
Yeah.
materials and nutrients.
Now it's understanding nature as a whole, that we're all part of an ecosystem. And so you want to approach things in a holistic or taking everything into account kind of manner. So, if you were doing holistic medicine, maybe in addition to, I don't know, say for arthritis, right? I suffer from arthritis. Maybe some of you do too. In addition to telling you, well, don't sit down for a long time and stay active, which is the last thing you want to do, and giving you some painkillers, maybe they do acupuncture, or hydrotherapy, or maybe some massage therapy. You try to bring all these elements together. So I keep on doing this movement, right? That's a whole, bringing everything together. That's the notion of holistic that you see in New Age. The last thing that they talk about is this notion of channeling. And this was really popular back in the 80s and 90s. It's kind of fallen, there's less talk about this now, I think because a lot of people make fun of it. But the idea was that you could give your body over to a kind of possession by spirits who could speak through you. And your book points out this is really a successor to the spiritualism of the 1800s. It's not a new phenomenon. These sort of things reemerge over and over again. Your book talks also about cults or new religions. And if you call something a cult, that doesn't sound good, right? Or does it? Your friend joined a cult. Good thing or bad thing?
That's bad.
Why?
Depends on the definition you're using.
Well, that's an important point. And your book says, look, in religious studies, it's a more neutral term. It means some sort of, systematic way of worshiping, But when in regular contemporary discourse, if your friend joined a cult and you put that on Facebook, everyone's going to say, oh, I'm so sorry for you. How can we get them out of the cult, right? Because we associate cults with bad things. If we use the more neutral term, new religions, that can sometimes be helpful. But what are the things that people do associate with cults? Let's say, again, somebody puts on Facebook, my brother just joined a cult. What would come to your mind? What kind of group are they?
You might have paid money to get into it.
Okay, yeah, or giving up their property or something like that. So that's one aspect. What else? Yeah.
Well, the first one that pops in my mind is Scientology will often call it a cult.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Scientology in just a minute. But what about in general? Or let's take Scientology. What makes them cult-like? Yeah.
Like the first thing that would pop in my head would be wildly outlandish thoughts and teachings.
So greatly at variance with the majority views on things, even the majority views on things among religious people. Scientology is a great example too of costing a lot of money as well. So some sort of very distinctive beliefs. High barriers to joining. Once you're in, what's it like? Yeah.
Aren't you isolated from everyone else besides people in the cult?
Quite often, these groups do tend to say, well, you don't want to be associated with the world. And it's, there have been some other groups that we've studied up until this time. Think about the Mennonites and the Amish. They, sort of segregate apart from the rest of society. You can think about the Mormons, for whom the ordinances are carried out at the temple, and not everybody gets to go to the temple. There's elements like this in other things, but yeah, you're right. There tends to be a kind of us versus them, and we do our stuff here. And is it easy to leave once you're in one of these groups? No. There's high barriers to leaving. So let's talk about Scientology. And we don't get much time to talk about it. It's founded by this guy, L. Ron Hubbard, who wrote a book called Dianetics, and then wrote a lot of other things as well, much of which are science fiction. And it's a non-theistic religion in that it's not about worshiping a god, but it combines elements of depth theology with a belief in reincarnation. Its primary activity is called auditing, and they have these devices that are used for that. And the goal is to become what they call clear. And then there's different levels to it, and it takes work and often going to seminars, which cost a lot of money to reach these higher levels. What else do you associate with Scientology? That's sort of very, very thumbnail sketch the basics of it.
Celebrities.
It has an inordinate number of celebrities and even just run-of-the-mill Hollywood people, cameramen, producers, casting directors associated with the movement. Part of that is probably from being located in the area for a long time. There are particular celebrities that people do associate with it as well. Tom Cruise, for example. Another thing that Scientology is very well known for is being extremely litigious in suing anybody who says anything bad about the religion, and doing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. Time Magazine actually ran a sort of expose on Scientology years and years ago, and it was seen as a daring move at the time because people who'd done that were what would you call it, legally persecuted until that time. The Unification Church is another group which they talk about in this chapter. And they have gotten a bit smaller. They were, again, they were a big concern back in the 70s and 80s. They were founded by this Korean businessman, Sun Moon, and he, like the book says, he outlined a reinterpretation of Christianity, which incorporated some early Christian Gnosticism and some other elements. Their view is, in the beginning, God intended Adam and Eve would beget a perfect family. Eve's seduction by Lucifer ruined this hope, and successive divinely chosen figures were supposed to, reinstate this divine family thing. Jesus was able to do that, get ready for it spiritually, but wasn't able to fully bring it off. And Moon and his wife are the modern day ones that will do this. And they got in a lot of controversy because of these arranged marriages. People would join, and it had all these elements of, that people associate with cults of being hard to get into, hard to get out of, radically at odds with a lot of other organizations. And once you were in, one of the things that they did was they would say, all right, you are going to marry her. Now, how they decided that, there's a whole story to be told with that. But, you guys have been in a class together. Would you guys like to get married right now? Either one of you? Maybe to somebody else that you know, but, you don't really know each other. That's what they were doing. And he got into trouble with, not so much for that, but on other things, and ended up going to prison. Your book talks a lot about other, what they call cult scares. It mentions the Branch Davidians, who you might remember, David Koresh. It mentions a much earlier group, the Jonestown People's Temple. Then fast forward to the Heaven's Gate people. And it's sort of trying to figure out what do these all have in common. As it turns out, they really don't have a lot in common, other than having those sort of characteristics of cultish behavior. There was a real scare about cults in the 80s and 90s. People were afraid, like when I was a teenager, that if we were listening to the wrong kind of music, we might be joining a cult, probably a satanic cult. And Geraldo Rivera did a big special on it. I got my sister's records put away for a while by my mom. But a lot of it turned out to be just sort of popular hysteria. And that's really where the story ends for this chapter. It's kind of ranged over a lot of stuff. Is it all popular religion? Not exactly. Not all in the same sense. But again, this was that miscellaneous drawer, so he's kind of bringing things to a close.